The following is a presentation of the Redskins Broadcast Network.
Welcome to Redskins Chronicles. I'm Larry Michael at Redskins Park. Each week here on Redskins Chronicles, we take a look at a piece of this team's storied legacy, and today someone special, a sit-down with the one and only Dancing Bear, Ron McDole. But coming up on Sunday, the Skins' final home game of the year, hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Washington looking to break a 6-game losing streak. They are 3-11. The Cowboys have lost 2 straight, but they're in playoff contention at 7-7. You know, this rivalry is one of the best in all of sports. And for Redskins fans everywhere, some of the memories from these games will last forever. Here's some of the highlights brought to you by Ameritel. Great rivalries have many origins, but the rivalry between the Redskins and Cowboys, perhaps the greatest in football, began over a song. In 1960, Texas oil tycoon Clint Murchison Jr. needed approval from each NFL owner before he could realize his dream of a Dallas-based expansion team. Only one refused: Redskins owner George Preston Marshall.
There's no excuse for expansion in the National Football League. We furnish football now for free through television.
Anticipating this roadblock, Murchison had shrewdly purchased the rights to the Redskins fight song, "Hail to the Redskins." In exchange for the song's safe return, Marshall begrudgingly changed his vote. The Dallas Cowboys and a new rivalry were born. Marshall gained a small measure of revenge when the teams first met on October 9, 1960. The Redskins won the game 26-14, their only win of the season. Dallas would remain winless. Fierce battles were fought through the 60s, most notably the Sonny Jurgensen-led comeback from a 21-0 deficit to a 34-31 victory in 1965. But it wasn't until George Allen's arrival in 1971 that this heated rivalry became an inferno. Allen once offered to fight Tom Landry to determine a game, and the clashing personalities of the two coaches personified the heart of the rivalry. Allen's eccentric blue-collar exuberance, Landry's aloof, stoic, white-collar demeanor. Cowboys had become the team to beat in the East. To Allen, that made them enemy number one and the main focus of his obsessive attention.
I found out that they spent close to $3,000 on postage and Christmas cards. We used that money to buy projectors. More projectors to study the Dallas Cowboys.
Now we bring those damn Cowboys next.
On New Year's Eve, 1972, those studies paid off as the ravenous Redskins, backed by a frenzied crowd, obliterated the defending champions to claim their first Super Bowl berth.
When we beat Dallas here to win the NFC Championship, that was the highlight, I guess, of some of our careers. We felt like we were the best team in football.
For both sides now, fan and player alike, the rivalry had become personal. Over the next decade, it intensified, both teams tasting glorious victories and heartbreaking defeats. In 1982, the Cowboys earned the chance to avenge their NFC Championship loss a decade earlier. They now faced the Joe Gibbs-led Redskins, but history would repeat itself, and a new war cry would become part of the rivalry forever.
That game was probably the game for me. If I picked one game, it was that game. For all the emotions, we'd never beat them since I'd been here.
I really had a dislike for the Cowboys because they felt like they were the America's team. They were sort of arrogant, but it was a new day and a new generation that we took over.
To be able to share that moment with the people of Washington, with your home fans, at your house, against your arch rival, is the best.
Cowboys lead the overall series, but the Redskins, who hold a 2-0 postseason record against Dallas, have enjoyed their share of boast-worthy moments, including a memorable season sweep in 2012. On Thanksgiving Day, rookie quarterback Robert Griffin III etched his name into the Rivalries lore with a jaw-dropping performance. Powered by Griffin's arm, the Redskins racked up a 28-point second quarter, securing their first Thanksgiving victory in the series history. Just a month later, the teams met again for the type of all-or-nothing brawl that George Allen's dreams were made of. Winner takes the East, loser stays home. It was a back-and-forth slugfest until the fourth quarter, when it became clear the Cowboys' star was fading and a Redskins star was rising, rookie running back Alfred Morris. Morris punished the Cowboys, torching the defense for more than 200 yards. Thoughts of a Cowboy comeback were stifled by linebacker Rob Jackson, whose pick of Tony Romo helped the Redskins put the game out of reach, claiming their first division crown since 1999. It began over a song, but now, more than 50 years later, the Redskins-Cowboys rivalry has become part of the very fabric of both teams' traditions. There may never be any love lost between these two franchises or their fans, but football enthusiasts everywhere love a good rivalry, and that's just what it is. More on the Cowboys and Redskins rivalry a little bit later in the show. In fact, Ron McDole, someone very familiar with this rivalry, and Amanda Mitchell and Redskins historian Mike Richman sit down with the Dancing Bear coming up next. Redskins Chronicles is brought to you by Diageo. Reminds all Redskins fans responsibility is a team sport. Redskins Chronicles is brought to you by AAA.
Welcome back to Redskins Chronicles. I'm Amanda Mitchell, joined by Redskins historian Mike Richman and the one and only Ron McDole, the Dancing Bear of the Washington Redskins. Ron, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine.
Now, speaking of the Dancing Bear, that's kind of a nickname that you can't get away from. I want to hear the story about where that came to be.
Well, you'd have to go to a lot of bars. No, actually, that was really tagged on me by Sonny Jurgensen. Mm-hmm. On a team, a lot of times guys get nicknames. Mine was happened to be at the Pall Mall in Georgetown, Paul Lucas and stuff. Well, and it was a kind of a contest to dance who could stay on the table the longest or whatnot. And there was a couple of, I think, Summerall and Brookshire, I was doing broadcasting then, and they were there, and Sonny started calling me the Dancing Bear. But anyway, and they carried it up in the booth, and everybody, thought it looked like a bear anyway. And so what kind of happened was that they started calling me that, and so everybody thought that that's what it was, but it was from dancing in the bars.
So that was your adult nickname. As a child, you were raised in Toledo, Ohio.
Right.
And did you have any nicknames growing up?
Not really. No, I didn't have a nickname.
No nicknames, but how did you get started playing football?
Really, I was a baseball player, and when I was in junior high, and I enjoyed playing baseball. And then in Ohio, Toledo, Ohio was a big football state. They had a junior high team that was coached by the fathers type of thing, and so I got I was big, not real big, but I was kind of got rocked into playing because I was bigger, and they needed linemen.
Now, was your father one of the coaches?
No, and I just started playing. We had a organized, in Ohio, very organized. There was 8 schools and stuff like that, and we'd play at their stadium on a Saturday night. Of course, they would scout us to see who they were looking for to get guys to invite them to come and play when we got in high school, and that's kind of how I got involved in it.
Now, you played your college football at Nebraska. How did you end up going there?
Well, we had good teams in Ohio, and we were city champs. I don't know how many times, but there's Nebraska was recruiting. They were dominated. They were in the Big 8, and they were dominated by, at that time it was the Big 8. They were dominated by Oklahoma and Bud Wilkinson and all that stuff. And so the Nebraska people, as I've found over the years, they don't like losing. So they started putting programs together to bring players, and a lot of scholarships. I think the first year when I was a freshman, there was 125 of us on scholarship. And now I think you can't even have anything close to that. And they even put together a scholastic deal where people contributed money, so it didn't count against the athletic program, and that's why they usually have a lot of these kids are straight A students now that play for them, and that's because they're on scholastic scholarships, of course, so they can get more people.
Now you played on both sides of the ball at Nebraska, weren't you?
Yeah, we played. Back then we had to play both ways. So, but I changed so much in difference. So that's kind of how you end up in funny places. But that's why I never played for the baseball team.
But you had a great college career, and then you were drafted by the NFL in 1961 by the Cardinals. The draft was a little different back in those days. Talk to me about that experience.
Oh, it was a lot different then. Well, see, we were the second draft of the AFL at that time, so they would all try. They didn't want to draft you. They drove you crazy all the time. Like we were at All-Star games. I was down in the Blue-Gray game and the Senior Bowl and that type of thing. And our draft, the AFL drafted first, and of course I was drafted by Denver. And then in Canada was also a draft there. I was drafted by Winnipeg. And so the NFL kept holding off. They were going to draft last because they didn't want to sign somebody that was committed and this type of thing. So you were being babysat and moved around. And once your career was kind of over in college, they would they'd call you up, they'd send you this. And I thought for sure I was going to be drafted by the 49ers to play offensive guard, which I really didn't want to play offensive guard, but you just wanted to play. And since we played both ways, didn't make it defense or offense. And then what happened is that Denver and Green Bay and Minnesota and so on. So
you went through a lot of different teams when you first got drafted into the NFL. We definitely want to hear a little bit more about that, and then most importantly, your time as a Redskin. But we'll hear more from Ron McDole when Redskins Chronicles returns. And we're back. It's Redskins Chronicles with former Redskins great Ron McDole. Ron, we heard a little bit about you being drafted into the NFL. Talk to us about those first few years. We know that you had a rough first few years with some migraine headaches. It's causing you some problems on the field. Let's hear about that.
Well, yes. It wasn't, I was drafted by the Cardinals, of course, and made their ball club. Didn't have any trouble there. They'd fired their coach, Pop Ivy, and hired Wally Lim from Houston Oilers. So they actually just switched jobs. And so when I came back the second year to the Cardinals, I had a new coach, of course. And basically I left there at the end of the season.
That certainly didn't stop you.
Right. In 1963, you signed with the Bills of the American Football League. So
I went through Minnesota. A lot of people don't know I went through Minnesota, but I went through Minnesota all the way to Buffalo. But I enjoyed it. Buffalo's a great place. Still is a great place to play. The people are fantastic. The only trouble is, if you go shopping, be prepared to get chewed out.
So how did George Allen get you from the Bills? You were having a good season with the Bills. How did George Allen get you?
He bothered Buffalo to death to get me. I mean, really what it amounted to. And Ralph Wilson, who owns them, is a great guy. And Ralph Wilson said, he said, George bothered me so much, he called me 3 o'clock in the morning. Of course, he lived in Detroit and really wasn't there with the team so much. And he said, he drove me nuts so much. He said, then he said, we were going down the skids. He said, we had a whole building, a whole team. And he said, I just felt that all the good years that you gave me and everything else was, least I could do is send you somewhere that, you could play. And that's really what he did. And
now that was 1971, George Allen's first season in D.C. And I've heard the story. Allen traded 3 draft picks to the Bills for you, but didn't he trade those same 3 picks?
Well, I traded a couple of them to somebody else for Ricky Pettibone, but that's beside. George did a lot of things like that.
So what was your favorite year as a Washington Redskin?
Oh, well, of course you'd say going to the Super Bowl would be the great one, but the bad thing about that is if you go, you better win because it's a long year.
And Ron, we have some highlights from that 1972 year. Let's take a look at the clips.
Just remember this, 40 men together can't lose. Okay.
In the early minutes of the championship game, the Cowboys seemed to be the better team. But a football game is played on two levels, one visible, the other in the dirt, where each move is as vital as a heartbeat and just as invisible. In the man-to-man combat on the scrimmage line, the Cowboys surrender the initiative. The Dallas offense collapses, and quarterback Roger Staubach is no longer a factor. The Redskins' offensive line shuts off the Cowboy rush, and Bill Kilmer throws 2 touchdown passes to Charlie Taylor. With the score 17-3, the Dallas Cowboys suddenly become a middle-aged team, somehow past the point of eagerness and energy that made them champions the year before. The final gun on New Year's Eve, the Washington Redskins run off the field with George Herbert Allen on their shoulders.
Well, it's always nice to see the Redskins nab an NFC title from those dreaded Cowboys, isn't it, Ron?
Oh, yeah.
We'll take a look at what the Redskins are up to this week when Redskins Chronicles returns.
Redskins Chronicles is brought to you by Diageo. It reminds all Redskins fans responsibility is the team sport. Redskins Chronicles is brought to you by AAA. Welcome back to Redskins Chronicles. I'm Larry Michael at Redskins Park. Sunday, 1 o'clock, the Redskins' final home game of the year as they host the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you so much for watching Redskins Chronicles. And as we say goodbye, something to get Redskins fans fired up with the Cowboys coming to town. We'll see you next time.